like given your expertise in, artificial intelligence and that, that being your main business line, it's quite a big buzzword right now. Do you think it's living up to the hype? And if so, what do you think's next for AI?
I have the answer for you. Okay, yeah, I can tell you what I believe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
Okay, strike that. I have the answer for you. I have a very strong opinion, and it is so strong that I am going after it as an investor and as an entrepreneur and investor. Okay. Um, a couple years ago, I actually formed, since I had this opportunity with Harvard, and since I had my hands are free from having to run the business. It's a beautiful situation when you have time to actually look at what's next. And I have been for the last 3 years. This is going on for the last 3 years. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Jem. I think in some of our conversation I might have mentioned this technology or this idea to you, or I discussed this at Harvard in class, but I will
Yep.
repeat myself because I'm a big believer. So I started a company. Uh, it's an early stage startup that has an opportunity. Uh, it is called Cerebral.
Uh-huh.
Cerebral is for the part of a human brain where reasoning and thought rationing is happening. Okay, it's a part of the human brain. So it's a cerebral AI, for that reason.
Hmm.
So the belief is the modern systems that we have, the systems that are based on neural networks alone, things like large language models as we know them, right? Okay, I'm not being original or saying anything new to you when I repeat like this idea that people say that it's a predictive typing on steroids, right? It doesn't it doesn't have a thought. There's no thought behind what it's producing.
Yeah.
And so if you take this further, okay, what is the best opportunity of humanity is following this idea of feeding the data about the world, feeding the data into the system. If there, I don't think the assumption that if we feed all of the data in the world, AI in its modern form somehow will figure out, let's say, a Newton law of physics as Newton had figured it out. No matter how much you explain the falling apple or planets rotating around solar system, the AI in its current form will not figure out relationship between gravity,
Hmm.
mass, the distance. It took human mind.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what is that delta? What is the delta between observation and doing and actually doing reasoning that's based on information, based on knowledge? And so what's coming into the picture now is a technology or idea that was actually not new in 1956. The idea that I'm discussing now, it existed from mid 50s. It's called symbolic artificial intelligence. In fact, back in the 50s when it was originally invented, uh, the scientists that the scientists that invented this term called it the real AI, the true AI, the real AI. And it's really what separates neural networks. That's basically a collection of relationships between symbols, between terms. Where in the symbolic AI, the knowledge, instead of being inferred from data, it's being encoded and defined. For example, if you define laws of physics, like laws of gravity or laws of thermodynamics, or other fundamental things about the fundamental reality of this of the of yeah fundamental reality, yeah,
Yeah.
laws of physics, laws of chemistry. If you define, if you manage to define those at the most fundamental level and build on those knowledge based, the belief was at the time that you were able to create what they were calling at the time, or referring to as uh, um, knowledge. What did they call them? Knowledge expert systems. They call them expert systems. If if you had basically, they looked like, if you look online, expert systems, you would see it's something that looks like an ATM machine that they would install on the floor of some engineering organization. There were hundreds of specialties. And you would have a line of engineers going to this machine, typing a question in plain English, for example. I need to calculate a radius of this thing. And it would create, based on knowledge and based on information that you're entering, it would create the response that actually based on the knowledge. It has nothing to do with neural networks. It was
So, can I just jump in there? What separates symbolic AI from artificial general intelligence, AGI?
so what you would need, to me, AGI is a collection of stitched together vertical domains defined in a symbolic fashion, thin, razor thin domains that
Yeah.
you can refer to. So you have a layer that's your large language model, effectively, that understands what is the question. It figures out that to answer this question, I need to reach out to calculate this. I need to reach out into a knowledge system that I have associated with me, for
Yeah.
example. So, for example, Jam, we're approaching a project with Küchenmeister, Hans Günters,
Oh yeah, yeah,
our
yeah.
Kochmann
You mentioned.
in bakery, where our thought is that we're going to be able to define physical processes and reasoning about adjusting parameters in the baking oven based on um, observation and measuring product throughout the process, throughout the production process. Yeah. So we're advocating fact. We're advocating an idea that combination of neural networks and symbolic AI, what is now referred to as either hybrid AI, hybrid systems, or they're also referred to as neurosymbolic artificial intelligence. Neurosymbol. You will hear this term more.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, we were able to define narrow. They're called ontologies. It's called a domain ontology. You can define domain ontology to be a baker, or you can define in a domain ontology to be an industrial engineer. Imagine this. Imagine that you have a collection of knowledge that makes up, let's say, a chemical engineer. Let's say someone who went to college, to high school, built that knowledge of chemistry, physics, math, everything. Like, imagine that
Yeah.
stack of knowledge. Now imagine that stack of knowledge can be represented as a domain ontology. And imagine that if you had a reasoning engine, that you can create this complete stack of knowledge, deploy this stack of knowledge onto a reasoning engine that's now aware of this knowledge, And now you start feeding the information from the environment. Now your reasoning engine is able to take the stack of knowledge, domain. Now this all of a sudden I am a chemical engineer, or I'm a baker, or I'm a food service engineer, because you created this stack of knowledge. I'm trying to say that ontology engineering is the thing that allows you to create that stack,
Yeah.
define that and create it, and then deploy it on reasoning engine. And the idea that we're proposing is that if you have a collection of this many domains, and if you stitch them together, you have what I think is going to be an AGI.
And so on that, if you were a young person right now, because like by the sounds of things, if we create these networks, which are basically expert level networks,
Yes, exactly.
what's the point of having any of these engineers or any of these professions? Because you can basically
You know,
get,
we're now touching on the issue that is very painful to me, because here I am sitting here, and I'm part of this, transformation. We're automating. Okay, for now we're empowering people. Okay,
yeah,
for now we're empowering, but ultimately it's a valid question, and it's a true question, and we should be collectively, as a society, discuss this. Our governments should be, we should be, because I don't think this issue is being raised enough. And I don't know if our governments and our leaders understand well enough what's coming. Elon Musk, I'm sure,
yeah.
does. And so what worries me, is I see where it's going. We're probably going to live in a time, you are for sure, you're younger too. We're going to live in a time of uh, hyper economic expansion. That's assuming we don't kill each other. By the way, I see, Dylan, either something that's really, really positive for everyone, or something that's really, really bad for everyone, but nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
And in order for this to be good and very, very positive, listen to me. We need to all hug each other and sing Kumbaya, and a lot of love. A lot of love, because the alternative is not good at all.
But as someone who knows what's coming or can see what's coming, if you were to put yourself in your younger
This
shoes,
is
what
where
would you be
the
focusing on?
listen. I have violin in my office. I have two as well, and I believe that it's possible that even I am going to live at the time when all I have to do is to play violin, play with my daughter, and go to the gym. Make sure that I eat well and go to the gym.
So isn't that what you're saying? Anything can be replaceable, like in knowledge, but only thing it matters is that relationship. Like so isn't that
Yeah, that cannot
pretty
be
much
replaced. That cannot be
it?
replaced.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a for as humans, this is a beautiful time, right? Because all the hard work, all the things that you can outsource, and you can really
We need
live the life.
we need to learn, Jam. We need to learn to be to go back to tribal.
Mm.
We need to have a lot of love and kumbaya. No, of course, I strongly believe that. That's what we need to live out, forget about guns, violence. I don't see any other alternative.
Yeah.
I suppose you got to give people a purpose again, because now work has become people's
No,
purpose, and so if you can automate that,
no, I
you've got to.
suggest we look far enough and assume that, okay, look, I don't know when you were last time in San Francisco, but San Francisco is full of cars that have no driver.
Yeah, Waymo.
On every intersection, I see 10 cars with no drivers all over the city. Come on, no. People that drive cars today, they need to be thinking about what's happening, what's coming their way, as everything else, guys. Unfortunately, I'm right there in the middle of all this. I see that. So I don't have the answer,
Yeah,
I'm doing this because if I do this in um, responsible manner, I try. If I don't do this, other people will develop. I mean,
Yeah.
but it worries me. It worries me that we don't have the answer. How are we gonna live in 10, 15, 20 years? How are we gonna entertain ourselves? How are we gonna keep ourselves occupied?